The American beautyberry, native to the southeast, displays its magenta berries throughout the fall and winter on the campus of Hinton Rural Life Center. Like Hinton, it has roots that go deep and roots that are widespread. For 60 years, the Hinton Center has served our community, leaving deep roots here in Hayesville. Over the years, groups have tried to record the beginnings of these roots through interviews and stories. And we've found archival footage from an interview with the late J. Walter and Velma Moore. This spring, we had a chance to sit down with the Reverend Claude and Betty Jean Young. Let's now turn to hear some of Hinton's earliest leaders tell the story of its founding. The Youngs were appointed in 1956 to serve the First United Methodist Church of Hayesville. There, the Youngs were welcomed by the church and the community, and they slowly began building their new life and ministry together.
When one day I was walking around Hayesville, every morning I went to my office and worked a while, and then I walked around the circle at Hayesville, and somebody said to me on one of those morning walks, "Have you been up to see Mrs. Hinton?" And I said, "I don't know Mrs. Hinton. Who is Mrs. Hinton?" And they said, "Well, she's a very wealthy widow who lives in a beautiful place up on Lake Chattooga, and we think the preacher ought to go see her." And so I said, "Well, I think so too." So I called Ms. Hinton. And I never will forget it. I went up there and she was sitting out on the porch looking out over the lake, and astounding view. Wonder view, she called it. And we just talked about her life, and her husband was a textile executive in Athens, Georgia. They found this property in Clay County, and they bought it and built a house and some outbuildings. And then they began to invite guests up there to spend weekends. And that extended, he began to invite customers and colleagues in the textile business. And so he began to dream about making it even bigger. And they started the hotel, and the building was built, the roof was finished, and it was encased in black tar paper, and he died. And she said, "Well, when he died, the dream died."
Reverend Frank C. Smathers was at that time the district superintendent of the Waynesville district. He instituted a method of ministry known as group ministry, during which the pastors in isolated communities such as Clay County would work together to support one another.
Later on, I don't know, several months maybe later, J. Walter Moore and his wife Velma, and he and Velma were getting older, and they were looking for something else to do. She was going to retire, and everybody knew her, and she was a great cook and housekeeper, and Walter was a good businessman. And they had bought into this dream of a project for the group ministry, some place where people could meet.
One night, we came home from church on Sunday night. We had church on Sunday night, which was rare. We were sitting in the living room, and J. Walter said, "Velma, we have an opportunity to buy the Hinton property." Claude and Betty Jean Young were in the parsonage. He was our minister at that time. We called him, and they said, "Come on down." We went. We told him what J. Walter had in mind, that we would like to give that part of the property to the church.
So we prayed, but it was such a good idea, you know. And I agreed I would talk to the superintendent about it, and Betty and the Moores would talk to the lay people in the county. And the district superintendent thought that was a wonderful idea, but he said, "You know, this is a poor place over here, and to finish that building, it's going to a lot of money." And he said, "You know, who's the deed you're going to go to, and who's going to finance that? Who's going to pay for it?" And there was no answer to that. But he was interested, and he was a good friend of Jim Sales, who was the executive secretary of the Southeastern jurisdiction.
He said he's an idealist. He's full of ideas about what we should be able to do in the Southeastern jurisdiction. Call him and tell him to come over and talk about it and see what he thinks. Let him look at it. Well, we called Dr. Sales, He and Ms. Sales came over the next day.
We told him what we had in mind. He was very enthusiastic about it, and he encouraged us very much. And from there on out, we felt very good about it.
But he bought into it. And he called me one day and he said, the first step in my plan is for you to come down here to Atlanta, and you and I'll have an appointment with Mrs. Hinton, and we'll go over there and talk to her about this plan. And when he said he had a plan, he had a big plan. It wasn't just a little plan. But the main thing was that he wanted to run by Ms. Hinton. Would she give the money to finish that building up there? And we would name it for her husband. And boy, you know, she jumped at that. If there was no persuasion to be done, that would be good. And the dollars she gave were enough money to complete everything that Mr. Hinton had planned to start with. J. Walter Moore, he agreed that he would be in charge of the finishing of the building. He would be the contractor, the general supervisor. He would look after the whole thing. He and his wife were going to start the B&B down below.
And my people that knew me, after they found out I bought it, they said, Walter, you're losing your mind. You lose everything you've got. You can't do anything with that property. And people sort of made fun of the fact that we bought it. We developed a nice little resort down there, and it became very popular.
Now, two things happened there. Jim Sales, executive secretary for the whole jurisdiction, he began bringing key people from every annual conference in the jurisdiction to the Moore's bed and breakfast before the Hinton Center was ever finished. And everybody who ever came up there went back excited. But as rooms became available, people began to want to stay at the center. Well, the property was deeded to First Church, I should tell you that. One relates to the purpose. The original purpose was the group ministries' desire for a common meeting place that would serve the needs of the churches, not only Methodist, but other churches, and the county. That was it. Now, when we realized we didn't have money to do that, and to make all that possible, it was agreed between the district superintendent and me and everybody involved, the trustees at the church who now owned the property, that the deed needed to go to the jurisdiction. But the original purpose was focused on the county, the total needs of the county, not just church needs. That expanded dramatically when the deed went to the jurisdiction, and the center began to grow.
While the roots of the Hinton Rural Life Center are deep within Clay County and the surrounding communities, it was from the efforts of individuals like the ones we've heard from today that grew these ministries beyond the county lines. Across our campus, you will find names peppered on buildings and plaques. Each of these names shares a story, a life, and a ministry, living out God's good news through the roots planted here at Hinton Rural Life Center.